All right, Reagan, I'll leave it up to you to figure out the best way to fix that. And I'm recording right now, so maybe we can plug that in later. All right, so we're prepping for exam 2. The exam window opens up tomorrow, and just as usual, make sure that you set up a time with Delta. If you're gonna be off campus, then you can set up with them to do a remote proctoring thing. They're not, so this is looks like a pretty big exam window, the 8th through the 21st, but that's because it includes fall break, so we added on a couple extra days there, and it includes a couple of weekends, so on all those days you won't actually be able to take the exam. So just keep that in mind, like when you're studying last minute, you think you've got plenty of time left to actually take the exam, but there's still the same number of days that available as any other time, so keep that in mind. This is going to be going over the 4 units of sensation, perception, memory, and learning. And this one does have a good bit more of kind of like memorizing terms, unfortunately. But we're going to try to, focus on the ones that you're definitely going to need for the exam. But of course, you should know everything. So basically, everything in bold. It's fair game, but we'll focus on the important things. One thing that we won't focus on, so you don't even need to worry about, is brain regions. So we talked about biology and behavior a good bit last time. It is good general knowledge to have in the context of these new units, but the exam isn't gonna ask about any of those explicitly. So still be aware that like different senses are processed in different parts of the brain, but you don't need to focus on that too much. All right, coming back to the questions that we started with last time, like how should I study, what should I study? And luckily, in this case, how should I study? I've got some evidence to support the things that I've been telling you guys, like trying to make more connections and relating stuff to yourselves personally. So does everyone, does this look familiar to everyone? Did you see the topic engagement activity 4 results? Okay, because I sent these out yesterday on email. They're also available on Moodle. But if you remember, in topic engagement activity 4, you had to go through a set of, I think, 24 words and identify either if it was a biological object or count the number, or if it had more than 3 vowels, or recall if in the past week if you've seen an example of this object. And so what I didn't tell you is that you guys were all divided into different groups, and so you got those different instructions. And what this was showing you was this idea of depth of processing, which they talk about in one of the units from this exam unit. So for the people that had to just identify if the word was a biological object or not, they tended to remember about 10 of the words at the end of the quiz. And then if they were asked to identify if they've seen this object in the past week, they remembered about 11 of those words, almost half of the entire set of words. And if you were just asked to identify if there were more than 3 vowels in each word, then you were remembered significantly fewer number of the words, about 7 in total. And so what that relates to is this idea of depth of processing, where when you're encoding information, the more that you're focusing on the actual meaning rather than like more shallow elements, like for instance, how many vowels are in the word, you're going to be more likely to remember them. And so that takes like hardly any more effort on your part, any like conscious effort, just determining if it has a certain number of vowels or if it's a biological versus non-biological object. But it has this measurable advantage in how well you remember things. So that's why I keep telling people to make more connections, and why I do the topic engagement activities to help you like tie things into your personal experiences. And so those are things that you should be doing when you study as well. Cool. So some of the other ways that you can make more connections, when you're learning about certain concepts, you can tie it into a funny example or story that you just make up yourself. So that is both constructive and can tie it into a personal experience of your own. You can apply it to some aspect of your life, or like think about how it can be applied in the real world of psychology, connecting it with other concepts from this course or other subjects that you're more interested in, and then, like I said, connecting it with experiences from your own life. And then another useful thing that's kind of constructive and will just keep you more engaged is if you can draw pictures about any of this. That's a big help as well. So in these slides, what I've added this time are little 3 asterisks that'll indicate a special study tip for whatever we're talking about. That will use some of these ideas of making more connections and improving the depth of processing. And then just of note, so these slides don't cover everything. It's not a study guide. It is pretty comprehensive. I'd say that if you know everything in these slides, you're very likely to get a B, maybe even an A, just knowing the stuff in the slides. The stuff that isn't included is basically the difference that would give you an A+. Cool. Any connection or any questions so far? What are you smiling at, Zach? It's okay. No. Thanks. All right, so this is going to be the same format as last time, just going through like Jeopardy style. We've tried to like pass out notes that will keep track of points. I think it works better just as an honor system thing. So yeah, we're just going to call at random. Whoever's turn it is will select one of these. We'll pull up the questions. There will be multiple questions or multiple answers on each slide. So multiple people have a chance to answer something. So let's just start up here. You want to choose one of these topics?
Memory.
Okay. What's your name?
Vanessa.
What is it?
Vanessa.
Vanessa? Cool. So memory for 100. Can you name and describe any specific kind of memory? So they talk about memory in all different forms. You can pick any of those and just describe what it means. You get first dibs because you picked it. But if you'd like to pass it, then it looks like behind you someone will answer. So. Yeah?
There's iconic memory, which is like memory of vision.
Memory what?
Of vision.
Vision, yeah. So what's your name?
Sarah.
Sarah? Cool. So Sarah was talking about iconic memory. So that's a specific form of sensory memory where it's basically sensory information that you hold for a very brief moment of time. And iconic memory is specific to visual information. So when you're looking at the world and the information comes in to your nervous system, it's held in sensory memory, and specifically iconic sensory memory, for a very brief period of time before perceptual processing happens further from there. Cool. Who else has another kind? Any kind of memory? Abby?
Episodic.
Episodic? Yeah. What's that?
So it's the memory of a specific event.
Yep. So episodic memory relates to specific events, and I'm just repeating things so that the live stream can get it later too. And usually you think of it in terms of long-term memory. So it's like when you remember any kind of past event from your life, you're using episodic memory there. Like
I was gonna say procedural. It's
procedural?
like remembering how to do something.
Yep. Yeah. Procedural memory, remembering how to do something. You have an example?
I mean, the guy in Fulcrum, when he didn't know that he could play the piano, but when he got to it, he was able to play the piano.
Yeah. Yeah. Was that HM that they were?
No, that was Clive.
Clive. Yeah.
HM? I don't remember what HM.
Yeah. So Clive is what's his last name? Waring? Yeah. Clive Waring is a like classic example in psychology that'll come up again and again. But yeah, he had deficits to some types of memory, but not procedural memory. So when he went back up to a piano, he still knew how to play it because that was a totally different kind of memory that was intact. By the way, whoever's been answering these questions, just jot down a little 100 for yourself there. Cool. Any others? Garrison?
Econ, the one with the hearing?
Yeah.
Or is that how you pronounce it?
I think it's like echoic.
Echo.
Yeah. So what is that one?
Where you hear the memory, like you hear stuff.
Yeah. So echoic memory is like what do we say? Iconic memory, and except that instead of visual information, it's relating to auditory information. So again, it's a type of sensory information, but specific to auditory information. Yeah.
Going off of that, there's also semantic memory, which is processing the hearing of language.
Yeah. So yeah, related to echoic memory is semantic memory, which is basically where you store, as you're processing that echoic memory, which is sounds, you start processing it into words or symbols. So it's not technically sensory memory, but it's related to how you process auditory sensory memory. Any other types people got?
Long-term, short-term memory.
Mhm.
The big ones?
Yeah, long-term and short-term, very broad categories of memory. What's, you want to describe at least one of them, or maybe the differences between
Less
them?
than minutes, long-term.
Yeah. You say short-term, couple minutes?
Less than a minute.
Less than a minute?
Accumulates.
Yeah. So short-term versus long-term memory. Short-term memory is held for like a minute, maybe a couple minutes before it decays. It just kind of disappears with time. And it's also like one of the terms that you hear more often nowadays is working memory, which I think is a better term, because short-term memory is basically the memory that you keep like really accessible to be able to use in the present moment. And then long-term memory is everything that you remember forever, your knowledge, your like episodic memories of your childhood, anything that basically doesn't, they say that it can't decay, it'll always be there. Cool. Anyone got anything else? Sorry, what was your name at the corner again?
Christina?
Christina? Okay, cool. I think y'all covered pretty much all of those there. One at a time, okay. Procedural, yeah, we talked about that. Semantic, episodic, the different types of sensory memory. Short-term versus long-term. So one of the things that they focus on in Fulcrum in long-term memory is this parallel distributed processing model. Has anyone spent a bunch of time trying to wrap their head around that one already? Yeah, don't do it anymore. It is useful at another time. If you are interested in it, yeah, go for it. But I think one, it's beyond the scope of what we need to know right now, and two, I actually haven't heard of it except for in the context of intro psych classes. Like once you get into like current research and stuff, no, I don't hear about it as much. It's like a pretty niche area or niche model, so it won't be on the exam. But if you're interested in it, keep reading about it. Cool. Christina, you went last. You want to pick the next one?
Sure, let's do memory for 200.
All right. So, that went to perception, didn't it? Did I click perception? No. Just a second here. Memory 200. All right, name or describe any of the key processes of memory. You get first dibs.
There's a how it's storage or
Sorry?
like storage.
Like storage, yeah. Is that one of them?
You have to store it.
Yeah, okay, cool. It is one of them. I just wanted to see how sure you were. Yeah, storage is one of they named 3 key processes of memory, and storage is one of them. Do you know like what order that is in the list of them?
There's recording somewhere in storage.
Yeah, so storage, out of the 3, storage is the second one. Yeah, and
Retrieval. You gotta retrieve it.
yeah. Well, you just gave someone else the next half an answer. We'll let someone else capitalize on that. So can you describe storage a little bit more?
It's just be able to make sense of it and be able to store it.
Yeah. So once that information is in your memory system, it's being able to keep it there in a form that you can then come back to it later and use it. Yeah. How about the other 2, either the first or the third process? Sarah?
Reconstruction's the third.
Reconstruction is the third one? Yeah, so describe that one.
It's like using the information from your past to recreate a memory in the present.
Yeah, so that's, a lot of people, I think, know the third step as retrieval, but in Fulcrum they describe it as reconstruction, which is a better term, because it is about accessing the information that you have in memory, which is basically like what retrieval describes. But the difference here is that what they're also describing is that when you pull that information, then it kind of turns into what you experience as a memory. And so you're basically pulling information from this memory storage system and from it building a memory in the current moment. So that'll tie into some of the errors that we can have in memory later, but it is important to distinguish I just gave away the answer for the bonus. That's why it's important that the third process is called reconstruction rather than retrieval, because you're basically using that information and then building your memory out of it. It's not like it exists in that form once you pull it out of memory. Cool. And what was the first process? Encoding? Yeah. What's that one?
It's converting the information you're receiving to a form that is easier to, or is useful.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah,
you can
it's-
store.
It's kind of vague and it has to be. Do we have sound?
Yes, we have sound.
Nice. How'd you do it?
I don't know.
Cool. Yeah, so encoding is the first step there, and it's about taking the sensory information that has been perceptually processed and then converting it into a form that can be used by the memory system. So basically meaning that it's put into a form that can be stored and then retrieved later.